Saints fans and who that's from all over the world. It's time for the Bayou Blitz with your hosts, Bob Rose and Kyle T. And guest Quinn Early.
Happy Wednesday, New Orleans Saints fans, fans of the NFL, fans of the New Orleans Saints, and especially fans of the Bayou Blitz. We want to thank you for having us into your homes and over your airways again on this chilly and rainy Wednesday night. At least it is where I am. I am Bob Rose. I am one of your XFL tag team members for tonight's Bayou Blitz. Joining me is my boss, my friend, my mentor, Kyle Mosley, and we welcome back to the show our good friend, former Saints great wide receiver, Quinn Early. Kyle, I'll start with you. How are you doing tonight?
Look, I must have forgotten my tryout pass because they sent me to the wrong stadium. But yeah, I'm doing fine, man. How you doing tonight?
I'm real good. I know the XFL draft was this past week, but we are creeping towards the midway point of the NFL season. Our Saints are on a roll, so we couldn't be happier about that. And we have our good friend, great analyst, and terrific wide receiver, Quinn Early, back in the house.
Yay, what's up, Quinn?
How you guys doing tonight?
Good. Good to have you, buddy.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Definitely.
Oh, anytime. Quinn, anybody who's listened to our show knows how active you have been off the football field, off the gridiron in retirement. Before we get into the projects that you've been a long-term investor in, with both time and energy, what are you up to these days?
Oh man, I'm just got so many irons in the fire. Just working on doing my stunts, doing my acting, trying to get my movie projects going on, and just raising money for Alzheimer's and Alzheimer's awareness. So, I'm keeping pretty busy. It's all great and exciting stuff.
Well, great. And I know you had the movie and the screenplay in works. Tell our fans where are you in that?
So the movie short that I was working on, Just Baked Cookies, we're almost ready to get into production. Just a lot of moving parts. So we're trying to tie up all those loose ends, and then we'll start production on that hopefully within the next month or so. And then I'm just trying to get my other screenplay going, which was based on my mom's book, Bryant Acres, which I've talked about on your show before. And so just talking to some people and just trying to get some stuff going. So there'll definitely be some things coming down the pike pretty soon here. So I'm pretty excited about everything that's going on, and it's just a lot of fun, just the whole process.
Well, Quinn, can I come out and just hold a camera or something, or a light?
You can come out and do whatever you want, man. You can act in the thing. You can do stunts. You can hold the lights. We'll figure it out when you get here. How about that?
Sounds good.
I want to do the stunts, but I can't use stunts plural. I want to do a stunt, but I'm sure, guys, I can only do it one time. I promise you, it'll be spectacular, but it'll be the last thing I do.
Hey, man, as long as you sell out on that one, that's all we need is one take. We'll be good to go.
You guys will remember me for a lifetime, I promise you. Quinn, you mentioned Bryant Acres, and like you said, any fans or any listeners of our show already know about your book. Kyle and I obviously know about your book, but for our new listeners, tell them about that and how they can purchase a copy.
Yeah, so my mother wrote this amazing book called Bryant Acres, and it's about my great-grandfather, 7 generations removed, and he was a free man of color during the time of slavery in the antebellum South. And he sold himself into indentured servitude, and then he went on to become one of the wealthiest landowners in the South. And it's a true story. And unfortunately, my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's before she had a chance to publish the book. So she asked me to publish it for her, so that's what I did. And it's been doing great. It's close to becoming a bestseller, and
Wow.
it's
Awesome.
just an amazing story. And if you want to purchase the book, it's bryantacres.com, and I give 100% of the proceeds to Alzheimer's and Alzheimer's research. So it's just an amazing read. It's an amazing story, and that's actually the screenplay that I wrote based on that book. And hopefully you guys will be seeing it in theaters at some point. But it's just an amazing story, and I've just, it's just been my pleasure to get it going for my mom and keep her legacy going.
Look, I got the book, and guys, you got to get a copy of it. Great story, great insight, especially during that period of time for someone of his stature to be able to gain the property that he has and how he lived his life. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's an awesome story. Sure.
Quinn, with as many irons as you have in the fire, have you had much time to watch football? And if so, what do you think? How impressed are you with the New Orleans Saints so far this season?
Well, I'll tell you, I have had time, and I always make time to watch the Saints play. And they've been doing just a phenomenal job. And I have to tell you, with all the parity that's going on in the NFL, all of the new quarterbacks, people getting injured and all that, it's just amazing that, Teddy Bridgewater has been able to step in and do the things that he's done. But what's really impressing me is the defensive play of the Saints, and that's really been saving them. And they're just really holding it together until Drew's able to come back. And I just can't say enough. It's just been amazing. It's a hard thing to do in that league. When your guys go down, and for next man to step up and to still get it done. So hats off to them. They've done a phenomenal job.
Yeah, they really have. And listen, you played with a couple of great quarterbacks, Jim Everett, Jim Kelly come to mind. But tell us, as a receiver, how difficult is the adjustment for you when a guy like Breeze or your guy goes down and you suddenly have your backup in?
Yeah, it's definitely an adjustment. Everyone has to adjust, and they've just done a great job. And I'll tell you, as a receiver, and I know that, so here's something that I don't think people understand. When you get in that huddle and you're in there with 10 other guys and that quarterback speaks to you, as an offensive player, if you believe in that quarterback. And when you get in there, and if the quarterback is like, listen, let's go. We're going to win this game. You guys just listen to me, and we'll get it done. Guys know if that's authentic. They know if it's true. And guys will step up and play even harder for a guy like that. So for Teddy Bridgewater to come in and do what he's done, and they all just take on extra responsibilities and know that they have to pull their weight and they come together as a team, it's just a pretty phenomenal thing. Because, when Drew is in there, they know they're going to get it done. There's just a certain confidence. So when the backup comes in and they believe in him as well, that's just a huge thing. And again, man, it's awesome to watch, and I'm sure it's awesome to be a part of for those guys that are playing.
Now, before I circle back to a couple questions that I did have based off of what you just said. The Saints play a rugged defense in the Chicago Bears this upcoming Sunday. What can you do as a receiver maybe a little bit differently to help out your quarterback when you faced a heavy pass rush like the Saints do this Sunday in Chicago?
I think what they have to do is they have to know that they're only going to have a certain amount of time to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands. So with that being said, listen, I haven't watched film on the Bears. I know that they have a great pass rush. But what they'll do is they'll say, listen, they'll find the weakness in the defense. They'll have their first look. Usually you'll have time to have your first look, second look, and then if nothing's open, you'll check down to the running back. If I was in there, if I was the quarterback, if I was the defense coordinator, I'd say look for your number one, then check down to your running back. And if none of that's there, one, running back, not there, throw it out of bounds. Right? So they know that they have to get rid of that ball quick. You can't stand around and pat the ball. Allow them to get sacks, put them in a hole. So I think they'll be ready. I think they'll do a good job.
Now, you did mention something, and Kyle and I have sort of talked about it on the show for the past several weeks. I know if I have one knock on Teddy from watching him on film and his past performances, in my opinion, he has been a little bit indecisive with his reads, almost like he doesn't trust what he sees. He reads defense as well,
right.
But he seems to me to hold on to the ball a little bit too long. And as a result, when he does get the ball into the hands of his playmakers, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, et cetera, we don't see him getting the ball delivered to a point where they can make plays on the move like we often saw with Drew.
Right.
Are we seeing the correct thing, or what are you seeing out of Teddy?
I think you are. I think you're seeing the correct thing. Here's the thing. That position is an incredibly hard position to play, as you know, especially on that level. I don't think people realize how powerful, strong, fast everyone is, offensively and defensively, is in that league. There's no time. You basically get the ball, and you have to have lightning fast decision-making, reflexes, get the ball out. And very few people can play that position on the level that Drew Brees, Patrick Mahomes, Watson, these guys that are at the elite level can play. So as a backup, right, there's first tier, second tier, third tier, things like that. So as a backup in that league, your job is to, if you have to come in the game, you have to manage and not lose the game for your team. And for me, I don't think anyone expects Teddy Bridgewater to play on the same level as Drew, but he's done a phenomenal job of not losing the game for his football team. And that's really the most important thing as I watch, until Drew can come back.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And Bridgewater has done a terrific job at taking what the defense is giving to him. Now, we saw him take a couple downfield shots against Tampa Bay, especially early in the game, but we didn't see that as much against Jacksonville this past week. As a receiver, when you played, if you felt like you were getting open down the field, but your quarterback was checking down, did you find yourself getting frustrated, or any of your teammates that played the same position?
Yeah, listen, what I would do is I would just let them know, dude, I'm killing so-and-so. I'm just saying. And then, hopefully the situation will rectify itself. But at the end of the day, it's all about the team winning. Now, I've played with guys who, the team would win, we'd win, and they're still mad because they don't catch one or two passes for that game. And, as you guys know, the receiver position is kind of a diva position, But I always found myself, as long as we won, I was okay with that, as long as not too many games went by and I was only catching one or two passes. Because then what happens is at that position, the media, the fans, everybody starts looking at you funny. Like, well, you must not be getting open. How come you're not catching any balls? How come your stats suck? That kind of thing. So you have to speak up, because I think, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. But I think that there's a happy medium, and you have to be able to do it in a way so that, you can still get your stats, but still make it about the team as opposed to you as the individual all the time. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It's about communication.
Yeah, it's very well put.
when you look at effective teams and teams that are able to produce well, everybody one understands the common goal is to win the game, right? But also
Right.
being able to communicate that through the whole locker room is very important. When do you get a sense? Let's say a backup comes into the game. Your guy goes down, backup comes in, like Teddy had to do that Rams game. I was telling people is the pace of the game for him. Number one, he was out of the league for such a long time. He really didn't have too many in-game situations other than preseason, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you can see he's a little bit more comfortable at the position. He's still hesitating from time to time, but people are expecting to see Drew Brees, and you're just not going to get that.
Right. Right. You know, again, you know, I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is wins and losses, right?
Right.
And, you know, he's not flashy. He's not going to throw for 400 yards. He's not going to throw 8 touchdowns. You know, it's going to be, you know, he's just a good manager. And I think, you know, you have to give the coaches a lot of credit as well.
Yes.
They know these are his strengths. These are his weaknesses, you know, and that goes for even when Drew is in there, right? They know the things that they can be successful with when he is in the game. And they've just done a phenomenal job of giving him those tools and helping him to manage that, keeping the mistakes to a minimum. And at the end of the day, I think that's the bottom line. You know, now some of the individual player stats might struggle a little bit, but I think that as long as they've all bought in, and it looks like they have, that's the most important thing. You know, it's a common goal, it's a team goal, and I think that, you know, with that being said, once Drew does come back, I think they'll be on their way. To me, you know, I know everybody, you know, the San Francisco 49ers right now are all the craze or whatever, but to me, the Saints are the best team in the NFC. You know, just by the defense being able to shut everybody down and, you know, them winning these games, I think when Drew comes back and now there's more points being generated, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for people to stop them. I think they're going to be great. They're going to do well.
Now, Quinn, you said to open the show, and I know we couldn't agree with you more. You pointed out how phenomenally the Saints defense is playing. And you know, they really have since that little bit of a hiccup in week 2 against Los Angeles, and even then they played some solid football for 3 quarters.
Right.
It starts with how well that elite defensive line is playing, and Demario Davis is playing like a true All-Pro. But I know this is a position you watch closely. Marshawn Lattimore and Eli Apple are playing lights out football, and they have absolutely suffocated some of the better receivers in the National Football League right now. Tell our audience what you see them doing right now that makes them so effective.
Well, here's the thing. When your defensive line is playing great football, that makes it easier on the defensive backs because now the opposing quarterbacks don't have enough time to make their reads, get the ball out. They got to get rid of that football, and when that happens, they'll make mistakes. So when your defensive line is playing well, which the Saints defensive line, they're really doing a great job, then the defensive backs play better. And not to take anything away from Eli Apple and the rest of those guys are playing great. But that just lends itself to the total defense playing well. And I got to tell you, I know that Eli Apple's playing with a chip on his shoulder because there were questions about him. Well, you know, he wasn't that great with the Giants or whatever, and, you know, how's he going to do? And so I know, man, he's got that chip on his shoulder, and he's making it work, and those guys are playing great. And I'll tell you, you know, last year at this time when we were talking, the defense wasn't really playing that great. It was all offense. And they still should have played in the Super Bowl.
Yes.
So with them now playing great and the offense being just as good as it was last year, to me, there's really no stopping them once Drew does come back. But the defense is they're playing some great football right now.
Have you been on teams where the offense and the defense just were not in sync and it showed in the results?
Well, I'll tell you, you know, those Dome Patrol years when I was in New Orleans, we lived and died with our defense and the leg, of Morton Anderson. And, we did okay on offense. We made some plays. We made some big plays here and there, but we weren't scoring 20, 30, 40 points a game. It was all about we need a play, the defense would make it, and then we'd somehow win the game, that kind of thing. So, just imagine if we would have had the offense that the Saints have now, when Drew was playing, we definitely, I think, would have been Super Bowl contenders.
And I kind of want to piggyback on Kyle's question a little bit to your point. It's not like your offense at that time didn't have talent. You had Bobby Hebert at quarterback. You had a very physical offensive line. Dalton Hilliard at wide receiver. Yourself, Eric Martin at wide receiver. Dalton Hilliard at running back. Did you guys get occasionally frustrated with the offensive game plan? Because I know you guys know how talented you were.
Yeah, I did. Here's where I got frustrated. We're playing, a team like the San Francisco 49ers, and we're up whatever it is. I don't remember exact scores. It was so long ago, but let's just say 20-6 going into the fourth quarter. And now we're running the ball up the middle, first down, second down, third down, just trying to run out the clock instead of just playing lights out football. And then those guys would slowly come back. So there definitely were times when we would get conservative. That was very frustrating. And I know, like, for me, I felt like, listen, I can beat these guys. Let's throw it. Let's do this thing. And, and then we had, Eric Martin. And at the time we had Floyd Turner and these guys. And, we just wouldn't do it. So, yeah, it was definitely frustrating.
Looking at the Saints wide receiving core right now, and we know what Michael Thomas is. I mean, he's the greatest of the great. But Tre'Quan Smith, who started out the season with some pretty encouraging signs, as you pointed out, in him this past off season. But he's been banged up with an ankle injury. Ted Ginn Jr., I think, is playing extremely well. But there's kind of a swell through Who Dat Nation wanting the team to make a deal for a wide receiver before the trading deadline. Do you think that the team should, based off of what you're seeing right now?
I think they're fine. I think, I guess, everybody's an expert. But, again, I think that, the expectations are maybe misguided a little bit because they're not as productive offensively because, again, Drew's not playing and Teddy's in there. But you have to realize that, and listen, I love Teddy. I think that he's a great player. But listen, Drew will be known as one of the best players to ever play at that league, at that position. That's a hard thing to do, and it's a hard thing to live up to. And that's not really Teddy at this point. So with that being said, I think that people think that, well, the receivers aren't being that productive. But I think when Drew is in there, there's a little bit different of a dynamic. And I think that they can get there and they can get it done. Listen, everybody's looking at you got Mike Thomas, right? You're not going to have 3 or 4 of those guys on a team. You're only going to have one. And I think when you have a great player like that, the other receivers are going to step up and play better. I remember when I was there and we had, Michael Haynes, who formerly played, for Falcons. We had Torrance Small. We had Wesley Walls. And there was always a competition to see who was going to have a better game. Now, I played well, and Mike played well, and Torrance played well, and Wesley Walls played well, and everybody was catching all kinds of footballs and all kinds of touchdowns. That's because there's a lot of egos there, and everybody wanted to be the guy, right? So I think when you have a player like, Michael Thomas, that brings the rest of that group up. And I think that is it's sometimes it's about chemistry, So I think that they're fine with the receivers that they have. I think that those guys are talented. They're good. Like you said, Ted Ginn's playing well. And, just let them do what they do. And I think when Drew comes back, I think they're going to be fine.
Well, Kyle, what's your thoughts on a potential trade for a wide receiver?
who?
Right.
That's who, and what's the price tag? I don't see too many guys really being offered up at this particular time. If it makes sense, okay, let's try to make a deal. But you look at the trade that occurred on last night with Jalen Ramsey.
Ooh,
I'm still shaking my head.
me
Two
too.
first rounders as well as a fourth rounder, really?
But that's a
And
little because Talib Kweli, Talib, whatever his name, he got hurt, right? He's on
yes,
IR.
he's on IR. Then you trade Peters to the Ravens. So you don't gain a guy because Talib is on IR. You extract another guy, a playmaker for you. So I thought it would have made better sense for them to keep Peters and as well as Ramsey. I don't know if there's some off the field dynamics that occurred that really jettisoned him off to the Ravens, but Peters has always been one of those strange guys anyway. So I just didn't understand why you would pay such a price tag. Now, I've watched Jalen Ramsey, and a lot of people say he's the best cornerback or one of the top cornerbacks in the league. I saw DeAndre Hopkins get the better of him many a time in Houston.
Yep.
Listen, I got to tell you that there were guys when I played that were self-proclaimed the best corners in the league, and and they did well and all that stuff. But there were guys who were quiet. I'm going to tell you, Eric Allen. People.
Exactly.
You might have heard me say this before, but that guy, he never said a word. And because he wasn't dancing and jumping around and with the gold chains and all this stuff, and he wasn't all flamboyant, he didn't get probably as much recognition as he should have. But I got to tell you, man, there was nobody better
Exactly.
that I played against back then.
But
You know what I'm saying?
Eric was a smart player, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. He knew where to be. He knew if you had this split and you released this way, he'd be standing there. He'd run your route for you.
Right. And
So,
and Quinn,
sorry, go
tell
ahead.
me if I'm wrong, though, Quinn, is that I see a lot of these big name guys. I'm going to go back a few years. Josh Norman, remember he had such a tremendous 1 year. Then all of a sudden he gets the big contract. He goes off, gets his major payday for the Redskins. Since then, I don't think he's lived up to the billing. That's
Right.
just my opinion, right?
Yep.
You can have a great year or two. I'm looking for consistency before
Yes.
I call you one of the greatest. That's
Right.
my opinion.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
I listened to Deion Sanders, and he said something interesting about the trade. He said, I don't know if Jalen's going to stay in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
It's like, my radar went up. And I turned around and looked at the television. He said, think about it. He came from Florida, no state tax, no state income tax. He's going to California, huge income tax.
The highest. Yeah.
Right?
You know that, yeah.
Yeah, you know that, Quinn, right? So
Yeah.
why he's going to be losing a whole lot of money out there? He said Jalen's a businessman as well. So will it make business sense unless the Rams give him some max deal in order for him to stay?
Right.
So then you look at the Rams organization, you just invested 2 first-round draft choices as well as a 4th rounder in a guy that potentially may not stay with you and may not sign, because it wasn't a sign in a new contract and trade deal, was it, Bob? It was just
No,
a trade.
no, not that I know of.
He has 1 more year on this contract. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, very similar situation to when the Saints traded for Eli Apple last year. Like you pointed out earlier, Quinn, Eli at the time had 2 more years left on his deal. And he's scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent as it stands right now at the end of this season. So the Rams won't even get that out of Ramsey because obviously we're nearing the halfway point in this year. But I want to ask you about that, Quinn. I'm not denying Jalen Ramsey's talent. I wouldn't put him on my top 3 list of current NFL cornerbacks. But we debated about it on this show last week, you and I, Kyle, as we were breaking down the Jacksonville-New Orleans matchups. When I had my doubts that Mr. Ramsey would even play because of his, and I'm using air quotes here, back injury. You're a teammate in either one of those locker rooms, Quinn, either the Rams and you just traded for Ramsey, or more importantly, the Jaguars, and you're in a tight divisional race. Your backup quarterback, similar to the Saints, is playing lights out, and you're capable of winning football games. And your self-proclaimed best defender begs off of a big one-on-one matchup with the Michael Thomas. How are you feeling in that locker room?
Listen, I might have my own internal scaling. Like I might say that's bullshit or whatever, but I'm not going to say anything because really at the end of the day, I'm worrying about how I'm playing, and I want the team to do well, and I want to do well for the team, but I can't really worry about what's going on with that guy. You know what I mean? I might have my opinion about it, but that's where I leave it. I'm not going to, really worry too much about it because at the end of the day, man, it's a business. People got to do what's best for them. And that's really where you leave it. I mean, there's always going to be those types of situations. It's different when you're in college, it's different when you're in high school. You're playing 100% for the team, for the love of the game, that type of thing. But unfortunately in the NFL, it becomes a business. And, you don't want to really mess with anybody else's money. So, sure. I might have my own feeling about it, but he's got to do what he's got to do.
Okay. Here's another question for you then, Quinn. Past year or so, it's kind of unprecedented what's occurring in the National Football League where guys are going public demanding to get traded. And it's actually going through. Most of the times, the GMs or the owners were like, "No, we're going to prove something to this guy and keep him in the fold." Yeah. Russell Wilson told the Seahawks, "I need a deal by XY day. If it doesn't get a deal, we don't get a deal, then bam, I'm going a different way after the season." Right? Then you have these other guys that are now doing what they're doing, the mystical back injury of Ramsey, the thumb injury of this guy. They would, whatever it is. Have you seen anything like this? I know you've been in the locker rooms, heard the stories, but isn't this just kind of remarkable how some of these owners and GMs are caving in?
It is. I think it's just a different day and age. I mean, I'm kind of old. I mean, I'm old school, right? Like when I played, you had no Twitter and Instagram and social media. So now what's happening is these guys can create their own situations. They have fans,
story, right?
They have people behind them, things like that. But as a player, it varies from player to player. You look at like the situation with Melvin Gordon. He, for the Chargers, he didn't have quite the same situation as Ezekiel Elliott. So it kind of backfired on him a little bit. So I think each case is different, but you're absolutely right. It's guys are being able to create more opportunities for themselves. And I'm not mad at it because for so long, man, guys were just pinned in and couldn't do anything. I will say, it is such a different time now where it's like, I want it and I want it now and I better have it now or else I want to be somewhere else, because you even look at the college players, now if guys aren't starting, right, when they're freshmen, they're leaving. When I played, you didn't get your opportunity, you got redshirted and you didn't play as a freshman. You had to wait your turn, and then my senior year, I got to play. So it's just kind of it's a different time now. and even getting away from sports, right? If people don't have it and get it right now, then they're going to quit and go do something else. And it's unfortunate, but that's just the times that we're living
in. Now, and to your point, you're absolutely correct. You had your own situation in San Diego, where, and you said on this show, you were struggling a little bit, with lack of playing time, game plan, coaching staff, etc. If you're in that, Quinn Early, are in that situation now, do you think you would have handled it any differently, given this day of social media, Twitter, Facebook, etc.?
Not at all. Not at all. I would have just, because I was always a big believer in you work as hard as you can. You get your opportunities and you make the best of it. Even when I was with the Saints and it was, my contract year came up and I wanted to stay, I would have handled it the same way. They basically tried to screw me. And I just said no thank you, and I ended up going somewhere else. But I wanted to stay with the Saints. I might have said that, but I wouldn't have. I don't think I would have handled anything any differently. But again, if I was in it now with the tools that I have now, it's just a different dynamic. So it's really hard to say. But I feel good about the way I handled all of my situations when I did play.
To be fair, I think Kyle and I knew the answer before I asked the question, because that's why New Orleans Saints love you, Quinn Early.
Well, thanks. Yeah. I tell you, man, that I love it there, and man, it's I really don't watch as much football as I used to, but when I watch my college team, the Iowa Hawkeyes, and I watch the New Orleans Saints. Everything else is just, I can take it or leave it, but man, those are my teams. So I'm behind you guys 100%.
Well, we definitely appreciate it. Tell our listeners again, how they can find you and your book and your projects.
Well, if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's just Quinn Early, at Quinn Early. I'm on Twitter at Quinn Early. My book, Bryant Acres, which 100% of the proceeds go to Alzheimer's and Alzheimer's research. It's www.bryantacres.com. If you message me on Twitter, I usually respond. I'm always on those things. So, love to interact with the fans and talk about stuff and situations and games and all that stuff. So get on there and follow me. I'll follow you back.
And Quinn, I'm sorry. Do you have any Alzheimer's walks coming up that the people can help support?
Well, I actually did one. I went to Des Moines, Iowa, and raised a bunch of money for them. I always participate in the one out here in San Diego. I did the one in New Orleans last year, and I don't think I'm going to be able to make it out this year, but I'll definitely keep you guys posted. But I think the best way to help and support is to get on there and order that book. Like I said, it's a great read. BryantAcres.com, and get yourself a copy, and that'll help me to raise money for Alzheimer's.
Yeah, I got to get you to sign mine, man. So I'm gonna fly out to California, and you're gonna have me holding one of those mics or something, the boom mic, I think.
Yeah.
Call it. And
well, I'll keep you posted when we get ready to start filming. Our Just Baked Cookies film. I'll definitely let you know, man. We'd love to have you guys out if you're willing to come on out.
Oh, definitely. And if it's time for the red carpet, I leave the pretty stuff up to Bob. He likes to do that type of stuff.
Bob, you got to get your suit pressed. Get that tux going. Let's go.
We'll do. I gotta pretty myself up in any way that I can to take attention away from my face. Listen, Quinn, we tried to get your quarterback, Jim Everett, on tonight with you too, because I know Iowa plays Purdue this coming weekend. And you, as you mentioned, went to Iowa. Mr. Everett went to Purdue. By the way, Penn State has beaten you both in the last 2 weeks, but that's okay. But yeah, Jim had some family commitments tonight. He is going to be on the show with Kyle and I next week. So if your Hawkeyes beat the Boilermakers, as you know, you're always welcome on with us. But we extend the red carpet invite if you feel like needling your old quarterback a little bit next week.
Okay, absolutely, and I'll be talking to him. Me and him will be talking about it, and I'm sure we'll have a bet going on. So, I'll keep you posted on that one as well.
Oh, you better believe it. Yeah, we love to stir the pot here at the Bayou Blitz. So any way we can help either one of you. Thank you so much for joining us, Quinn. It is always a pleasure. And any last words for us or our fans for this week?
Again, man, just support you guys 100%. It's a great thing that you guys do with your show. And, for all the Hoodats and the Hoodat Nation, I'm behind you guys 110%. And let's just keep it going till Drew comes back, man. Let's go on to the Super Bowl.
All right.
Who dat?
That's what I like to hear. All right, Quinn. Good to hear you, buddy.
All right, man. Good to hear you guys, too. You guys take care. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.
Talk soon.
Take care. Bye.
Cool stuff. That's Mr. Quinn Early, former wide receiver of the New Orleans Saints. Okay, Bobo, let's talk a little bit, kind of break down what we saw in Jacksonville with the Saints versus the Jags. What's your quick takeaways there?
You know what? I know that the Saints only put 13 points on the board, and a lot of people were kind of they're thrilled about the play of the defense, but worried about, hey, the Saints, Teddy Bridgewater, he's not putting enough points on the board, et cetera, et cetera. But I'll tell you what, remember that the Saints were inside the Jacksonville 10-yard line to end that game. They were just in a position where a couple of kneel downs and they could call it a day. But they were in scoring position there. And earlier in the game on one of Will Lutz's field goals, it was a short field goal, so they were inside the red zone there. And then there were two other drives, I believe it was two, but one for sure, where the Saints were in a longer field goal position, but Teddy got sacked a couple times. And that Jacksonville defense, we know how good they are. We previewed them last week, Kyle. So I'm not, on paper, I'm not worried about the Saints' offensive production. They converted some key third downs in the second half against Jacksonville, as we have seen them do through this 4-game winning streak. But the news that everybody is talking about is how injured is Alvin Kamara. That's going to be the big talk for this week.
Well, I'm going to tell you this much. A high ankle sprain is nothing to sneeze at, and it's not easy to really come back from an ankle sprain to be 100% throughout the rest of the season. It is a concern, but however, if you look at how the Saints were able to respond and how Latavius Murray played is really encouraging. That's the best word I can use. So if I were a lot of the Houdat Nation, I would really say let's make sure that Kamara can rest the leg until, let's say, if we can get through the Bears and the next couple of games, if he doesn't really have to play a lot of time and rest that ankle, because, the high ankle sprain is really a twisting of the bone between or contusion of the bone. I think that's the medical way of saying it, between the ankle as well as the shin part, right? So you have that area where no matter how much pressure you put down on it, the way you cut and the way he cuts is always going to be affected, right? So it's concerning, but I'm not highly concerned that he won't be able to rebound.
No, I agree with you, and I agree that. And look, we're not inside that locker room, and we're not official medical personnel. But I'm inclined to agree with you, Kyle. I think that hey, listen, if this were a playoff game or a game for the playoffs, for a playoff berth specifically, I am sure that Alvin, if there's any chance at all, if he could walk, he will play. But I'm more inclined to think that maybe the Saints should and could hold him out for this one. Listen, and I'm not advocating waving the white flag on a potential loss or anything like that either. I'm like you, though. I am thinking more for the long term. We want Alvin Kamara, 100% or as close to 100% as an NFL player is going to get, from October through the rest of the season. We want him more prepared to fight the more important battles that are going to take place on the football field. And I think that the Saints have proven, as we've seen without Drew Brees, that the rest of the talented players on this roster will come together and do what it takes in all three phases of the game to try to come away with a victory. And you're right. Latavius Murray, I thought, played outstanding football. He was the more effective back of the two in the second half against Jacksonville, not only as a runner, but I really like the way he's playing on screen passes. He's not nearly as dynamic as Kamara, but Latavius Murray has been a starting back in this league, and he is he has starting caliber potential. That's why the Saints brought him in when they lost Mark Ingram, or when it was apparent they were going to lose Mark Ingram to free agency. So Sean Payton and the staff, they're confident with what they have in Murray. They're confident with what they have in Dwayne Washington, who would slide up to be the number 2 back if they do sit Kamara out for this one. And believe it or not, they'll probably rely a little bit more on the passing game and a power running attack against this Bears team coming up. And I think that might be the more effective way to beat them anyway.
Yeah. The Bears, okay, they're going to be without Hicks.
Yes.
And I know that's a major stumbling block for those guys. The Bears the defense relies on that front to be able to put pressure on the quarterback and make them make mistakes, right? Very simple type of scenario that you want to have for a Bears player to know this is my assignment, this is how I need to attack the quarterback. Those defensive backs in the past have been very opportunistic in being able to intercept or cause fumbles and things of that nature. I just don't think this year's Bears squad is up to the caliber of last year's. That's just my opinion from watching tape. Now, let's go back to Murray and the Russian attack. He's going to be critical because he had a 40-yard touchdown off of a screen pass from Bridgewater called back due to a holding penalty, right? I think it was Michael Thomas was holding. That was another positive sign right there. If you give him some opportunity in space, just like Alvin Kamara, he can be able to do some damage. So you brought up a key. He's good out of the backfield. He can run the ball, and he can be able to catch out of the backfield as well. A critical part is Sean Payton being patient enough to see if the run is going to work. That's the problem. So if you look at the first half for the Saints, Alvin Kamara only had 8 yards out of 6 carries. Murray only had 2 carries for 3 yards. A paltry 1.4 average between the both of those guys. By the end of the game, I think when you look at what Murray was able to do, he had 8 carries, 44 yards, 5.5 average. His longest was 15. Kamara, 11 attempts, 31 yards, 2.8. Then they brought in Hill, and he had 3 carries for 17 yards. They kind of bumped it up, right? And I know Ginn had 12 yards. So the Saints as a unit had over 100 yards rushing. That's what you'd like to see. I think the opportunities for the Saints to be able to put some rushing yardage on the Bears is going to be critical as well. Look, the Bears lost to who?
They lost to the Raiders last week.
The Raiders. That's what I'm about
Yep.
to say. So,
Yep.
last year I would have been more concerned about going up to Soldier Field. I know it's going to be a little bit cooler, but and it's a primetime game. It's going to be one of the Fox games of the week, and most of the America is going to watch this game. I think you're going to see a very steady pace for how the Saints can be able to keep matriculating the ball down the field, methodically down the field, and make sure that they protect the football. That's going to be the key. I think our defense, whether it's Daniel or Trubisky, they are going to win this game for the Saints.
Yeah, I think that they very well could. Staying on the offense, to expound on your points on the offensive side of the ball, I love how patient Sean Payton and Pete Carmichael's have been in the running game, and it has really paid dividends in the second half of all four of their their victories.
Right.
And they've been much more efficient at running the ball in the second half because they stayed patient. I think Michael Thomas is going to have his numbers, his catches. He always does. And even though the Bears secondary is opportunistic, there's not necessarily any one player who is going to, in that Chicago secondary, who is going to be able to stay with Thomas one-on-one. And you brought up the short, controlled passing game that has been so effective against the Bears. And you and I talked about it earlier this week when we watched some film on this Bears defense. That is the most effective way to beat them. And that is what, folks? That is the strength of Teddy Bridgewater's game. So all of you that have been yelling and screaming, and I'll include myself in this, that Teddy isn't taking enough chances down the field, don't look for that to happen again on Sunday, because they need to get the ball out of his hands quickly, like Quinn pointed out against that Chicago pass rush. But that plays right into where Bridgewater is comfortable, where the best part of Michael Thomas's game is. And I look for big games from both Jared Cook and Josh Hill. Yes, that Josh Hill at the tight end position. For short yardage, some tight end screens, and to move either one of those guys out in the flat after they get a chip block on Khalil Mack. And we have some articles in the Saints News Network and on our SI.com site highlighting today and coming out tomorrow that are highlighting such a strategy. So look for the Saints to continue that controlled offensive, very patient game plan. And it should start to pay dividends in the second half. Like you pointed out, Kyle, we saw the Raiders do that exact kind of thing last week, and they controlled the pace of the game in the second half because the Saints defense is going to match up really, really well with the Chicago offense. Chicago has a couple nice running backs, and I especially like Cohen, their all-purpose back. But he has kind of been a non-factor this year. Chicago has had one heck of a time protecting their quarterback, regardless of whether it's Mitchell Trubisky, who may come back for this game after missing the last two, or our old New Orleans friend Chase Daniel. Chase has played well, but they haven't been able to protect him. And Chicago does not have the dynamic weapons in the receiving core that are going to threaten a secondary like the Saints have seen in DJ Chark and Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin the last few weeks. I'm not saying that Marshawn Lattimore, Eli Apple and company need to rest on their laurels. I just think that they match up better with this Chicago receiving core than they have against any other receiving core the last few weeks, and we saw how well they played. I think a player to spotlight, though, for this game is going to be Chauncey, our rookie Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. As you know, Kyle, in fact, I believe you're the one that broke the news a couple days ago. P.J. Williams, the Saints nickelback, has been suspended for the next two games. That has a lot of people worried, and I guess I could see why. But if you're gonna lose a defensive back for a game, the Chicago Bears is the game you want it to be at, because Chicago is not a high-flying passing attack by any stretch.
Yeah.
We have seen more and more snaps from Chauncey each of the last few weeks, and I thought he's played well. So the spotlight is going to be on him. He's going to get a lot more snaps this weekend. Do you like what you see from the rookie so far?
Yeah. In the piece that I wrote for SI.com on late last night, the Saints had planned all along and have been preparing for a time like this with P.J. Williams being out of the lineup, or if there's an injury ahead in the pecking order for the Saints. That's why they drafted a kid like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Aaron Glenn said it best. He has the body, he has the smarts to be able to play this game, and expect to see a lot of more dynamic plays. Now, if you did not notice this play, was, in my opinion, one of the best plays of the year. One-on-one with Leonard Fournette, open field. He did not miss a beat. He tackled him. Not only did he tackle him, Who Dat Nation, he tackled him short of the first down. That was critical, because if you look at how the Saints defensive backs in years past have tackled, it hasn't been as well as we wanted. So to have a guy who is not afraid to mix it up, is not afraid to go out there and be physical, and remember back in I guess after rookie mini camp as well as during training camp, you and I projected that we would see more of Chauncey on the field around the same time of the year. Remember that? So we didn't know if it was going to be due to suspension, but I would like to see what the kid has to offer, the confidence he has, the swagger. It only bodes well to have that type of mental makeup as a defensive back. Now, let me go back to what you were talking about. Jacobs for the Raiders put 123 yards on the Bears. Wow. And I'm just thinking, Jacobs, his game is kind of similar to Murray. You know, Murray's a little older, but that bodes well. Now, I think that our offensive line could really do a good job opening it up. I know the one critical guy people are always going to be keying in on is defensive player of the year, decade, or whatever, in Khalil Mack. So the Saints, when he came to the Superdome a few years ago as a Raider, Khalil Mack left blank with a big old goose egg for sacks. He had no sacks in the game. He did have some good stops here and there, but I think he could be neutralized. The one way you neutralize a defense and you really put pressure on them, if you can be able to run the ball, is like a gut punch for a boxer. Hit him enough times in that area that kind of slows him down, and he doesn't want to get hit any longer. And I think that's the approach, if I was Sean Payton, to take with these guys on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, and I think that they will. I agree with you. This Saints team has been very physical in pretty much all of their games all season. And that's where, and I can't believe we're saying this about the Bears defense, and we're not disrespecting, but the more physical teams, the Green Bay Packers earlier in the season as well, and I'll just politely call them an offensively challenged Denver Bronco team. They had success against the Chicago Bears by being physical and patient. And by doing so, you do neutralize Mack. Chicago's not the type of team that you want to have to throw the ball 35 to 40 times. You're going to be in trouble. You're going to turn the ball over, and your quarterback is going to hit the ground an awful lot. That's just the way this Bears defense is built. But against the run, and statistically, they look good against the run. Chicago does. They rank fifth. They have the fifth best rush defense. I think they give up about 83 yards a game. But as you pointed out, Akeem Hicks is a big, big player that they're going to be missing inside. And he is a Pro Bowl caliber defender, too. So I think that without Hicks in the lineup, Chicago still has some talent there, but the key is they're going to be thinner. So that's all the more reason to keep patient and physical with an inside running attack to sort of wear down that Bears defense as the game goes along. We might see a lot of 2 and 3 yard carries early in the game, but those are going to be stretched out to 7, 8, 9 yard tops later in the game if they stay patient with it, like the Saints have through this 4-game winning streak.
Right.
And I do watching Jacobs for the Raiders last week against them, or 2 weeks ago rather. The Bears were on a bye week last week. You're right. He has a very similar running style to Latavius Murray. That was my first thought when I was watching it too. I like the way the Raiders offensive line and blocking schemes played against Mac, and they pretty much neutralized Mac. And Oakland doesn't have nearly the talent on the offensive line and especially at the tackle position that the New Orleans Saints do.
Yeah. Well, here's the challenge for the Saints. Wide receiver. We know Michael Thomas is going to get his due. Will Ted Ginn, Austin Carr, Lil Jordan Humphrey be able to complement Michael Thomas? They have pretty good defensive backs as well in Clinton, Dix, Clinton Dix, I'm sorry, as well as Prince Amukamara, as well as Kyle Fuller, right, who had a big payday this past year. So, and yeah, of course, Mr. Steele himself, right? So, yes, it's going to be a challenge, and that's why I think the first key is how well the defense can be able to, the offense can be able to put pressure on their defense by rushing the ball, and then test those guys from time to time. There's not going to be a lot of openings, but I think the short intermediate game, which Teddy excels in, is going to be important, and those guys can execute from there, especially with Jared Cook. I like what I see now in him, and hopefully we can see more of him. I know you're going to do a piece on Josh Hill. Hopefully Josh Hill can show up. He's going to have to be important in a game like this as well.
Yeah, and I think this is the type of game that curtails to the skill set that Josh Hill has. Listen, fans, I'm not saying that Josh Hill is going to have 9 catches for 90 yards and 3 touchdowns or anything like that, but I think he's going to be big in the blocking game, in the run block game, as well as the pass block game. He's going to help out on whichever side that the Bears will line up Mac on, and they do like to move him from side to side. I can see a lot of plays where Josh will chip and help out with the outside pass rush to kind of knock Mac off of his steps, and then move into the flat, where we know Teddy feels comfortable checking the ball down if his first downfield read isn't there. I don't see a lot of deep plays from this Saints offense. I agree with you. But we don't see a lot of deep shots with Teddy either. That isn't the strength of Michael Thomas's game. He works the intermediate routes as well as anybody in the game today. And if you flip on that Bears playoff game against the Eagles last January, I know everybody wants to talk about, Chicago would have won that game if it wasn't for the field goal kicking, and that is very, very true. But Philadelphia had success offensively, staying patient with the running game and working, I believe it was Nelson Aguilar, but one of their receivers and Zach Ertz had big games production-wise and on third downs against that Bears defense through the intermediate routes.
Yeah. The question is the quarterback. And we know Trubisky will be coming back from injury. We know what you have in the journeyman, Mr. Chase Daniel. He had 2 interceptions on 2 weeks ago in London. The question has always been, and can they rely on Mitchell Trubisky? Can they rely on the quarterback in that offense? He has had some outstanding games. He's had some questionable games. The consistency is the key right there. Which Mitchell Trubisky will show up on Sunday if he's going to get the start. Now, Cam Jordan, Marcus Davenport, that whole defensive line has been playing outstanding. I believe they could be able to get some pressure on those guys. That offensive line of the Bears did look a little bit leaky against the Raiders. Demario Davis is playing out of his mind,
Yeah.
So, and I like what we saw in Kike Alonso as well. He's filled in pretty good, and A.J. Klein is going to just be A.J. Klein. So, not a knock on it. He's just going to be that steady presence, right? So, when you look at everything with this team, I think on paper, everything points toward the Saints. It's interesting. Vegas has it pointing toward the Bears. I'm just interested in trying to figure that out. I think it's because of Teddy Bridgewater. But all in all, what's your prediction there? What do you feel will be the outcome of the game?
Saints fans, we should expect another game, where there aren't many points scored. And that isn't going to be due to offensive ineptitude, at least on the Saints' part. I just think that both of these defenses are that darn good. And it's probably going to take a defensive turnover or two, or a play on special teams to swing the momentum, to swing field position. I do feel confident in this matchup, though, even though it is on the road, second straight on the road in a tough environment. But I like the Saints to come out of it. I'm going to go with a score like 17-13.
Okay. Yeah, and I do agree. A defensive turnover here or there, as well as who can be able to sack the quarterback more is going to be the key. Who can be able to get the team off, I would say at a 35 to 40% rate in converting on third downs. If the Saints can limit the Bears to that rate, I feel good. That means that they really aren't contributing much and being effective as a third down unit. I see the Saints coming away with this game 23-17, something to that nature, It's going to be a close one, just like I called last week. It was going to be a close one, right? And if the team keeps their focus, their discipline on defense, don't allow any leaks like corn can leak out, but if they can neutralize that running game like they have done most of the season, the Saints will come home away from Soldier Field with a win back to the Big Easy.
That definitely works for me, and it's going to be another physical close to the vest game. But these Saints, as you pointed out, they feel comfortable playing this kind of game, with or without Drew Brees. We saw them win in kinds of games like this last season as well. This has become, even though it's still a young roster, this has become a very seasoned team that they don't bat an eye. In tough road environments, they don't bat an eye against physical teams. They can play with anybody in any style of game.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's going to be a good challenge, and it's going to be one of those good, intense defensive smash mouth type of games. And I like our chances. I like what I see on the offensive line as well. Pro Football Focus had Eric McCoy rated as one of the top offensive linemen against the rush. For the rush as well as for pass blocking. I think he was in the top 5 of both of those categories, and he was the only player like that for the National Football League. So that's pretty good to see what the rookie has been able to accomplish early in the season. Okay, Bobo, tell everybody how they can be able to follow you on the World Wide Web.
Well, Kyle, thanks to you SI.com and the Saints News Network. I literally am everywhere now. I am on Facebook and Twitter. You can follow my personal accounts, Bob Rose on Facebook and at Bobby R 2613 on Twitter. Obviously, as we promote every week, we do have our own Bayou Blitz Facebook page. Just search for Bayou Blitz. You'll have to send a join request, but I promise you'll be welcomed into the family and you'll have fun with that group. We're a very interactive bunch. We have a lot of fun and we exchange a lot of good, solid information about the NFL and especially our New Orleans Saints. Also find us on Twitter at Bayou Blitz 412. It's still a growing page, and when you and I have time or they extend the amount of hours in a day, we'll get a little bit more interactive on that Twitter page as well. But we could use your help there, fans, in boosting that up. So give the Bayou Blitz Twitter page a follow. Some of my articles are through the Canal Street Chronicles, can be found on Facebook, Canal Street Chronicles, or at Saints CSC. And as I turn it over to you, Kyle, I can now be found, and I will be churning out more and more as I get a more firm handle on technology. I will be churning out more and more articles through the Saints News Network and SI.com as well.
Yeah, you can follow us on Sports Illustrated sites, si.com/NFL/Saints. That is where you can find the Saints News Network now. And we have Bob Rose as well as Barry Hurstis, myself, as well as Brendan Borland and Kevin Buckles and Carla Antoine. She's going to drop her power rankings. Man, and it's a pretty good read. So I'd like to see that on tomorrow morning. Guys, don't forget, you can always check us out online. The Bayou Blitz podcast is at www.saintspodcast.com, or you can try us on the Spreaker app or Stitcher or TuneIn, as well as iHeartRadio. We are now on iHeartRadio, and Bob, I got a feeling that we should get approved for Spotify pretty soon. So if you want, yeah, so that means we're everywhere. So you can be able to listen to us and download what we are talking about on your favorite app. All right, guys. What I would like to say for the Who Dat Nation, you guys stay classy, but always don't give up and be tenacious. This is Kyle T. Mosley with Bob Rose of the Bayou Blitz and Canal Street Chronicles. Have a good night, Bob.
You too.
All right. Who Dat, baby? Take care.
Who Dat.